Web Development 101, Lesson 2 Headings and Images, Part 1. Let's talk about headings. We're going to be covering a lot of content in this lesson. The heading 1 through heading 6 elements, emphasis strong, and image tags for HTML elements. For attributes, we're going to be talking about source, alt, width, and height. And we have a bunch of new CSS styles dealing with font and then border. New vocabulary heading, it's a word, phrase, or sentence that's typically used at the beginning of a section and explains or gives a title to that section. And HTML headings are defined with H1 through H6 tags. Image is a digital version of a picture. Common formats that you're used to, PNG, JPEG, or GIF. And typography is the style and appearance of text. So that's like the font, if you think of different font faces. So these are examples of some different fonts. Web pages have a lot of content, and you'll want to separate things out and make certain things stand out different than other things. Heading tags are a great way to do this. So we can separate them into different headings, and then those headings are different sizes. So the 6 levels, starting with the biggest to the smallest, are H1 and H6 is the smallest. So this is what they look like. They have a default size and a default text, and default on their bolding as well. H1 is usually the largest one, and you use that as a page heading. H2 is used as a subheading for H1, and then the other ones are just used if you have more information. Each heading has a start and an end tag, so H1 and end H1, and you should not skip headings, so you should start with H1 and then go to H2 and H3. And you should avoid using more than one H1 on a web page. It's not going to give you an error. That's just a guideline. Different heading levels can be used in a section and then nested within other ones. So this page heading uses an H1. That's table of contents. You can see right here, table of contents. And then it has some heading 2. So heading 2 is the unit, heading 2 unit, heading 2 unit, and then underneath there's a heading 3, and that's like each of the chapters within the units. So in this challenge, it would like us to add the correct heading style to each line. So we're going to go from the largest heading to the smallest. So we have H1 through H3. So if we look here, the table of contents is going to be our H1 tag. It's important to have an H1. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on your screen here. And to have that, notice how everything changes to an H1 because I didn't end it yet. Pretty cool. When I get that end H1 in there, now just table of contents has it. So unit 1, 2, and 3 should be the heading 2. So for unit 1, I'm going to do an H2 and then an end H2. And I'm going to repeat that for unit 2 and unit 3. H2 and H2. And H2 and end H2. Each of those units now is the size for the heading 2. Now for each of these chapters, it wants us to change those to heading 3. So each one of these is going to be a heading 3. And I want to show you a little trick here. You can, end here, copy and paste these headings, the tags for them, and then the end ones as well, instead of having to retype them over and over and over again. When I have this many, that's something I like to do. So now you can see I have no errors in here. Table of contents is H1, Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3 are all H2, and then each of the chapters is surrounded by a heading 3 tag. If I check my code, I should see everything show up green. Font family. So We learned in the first lesson that we did how to apply a background color using background color, and then text color using color. We're going to learn about using font family to change fonts from just the generic one that it looked like on there, the default, to some other fonts that are different and can be used for different purposes. So changing a font changes how the text looks. Some fonts make things easier to read in small sizes. Some look better when used on big posters. Some are fun. Others are more serious. And you can select whatever font works best for the kind of web page that you have. So generic fonts can be grouped into the following 5 categories depending on the way they look. So the generic font family category names are serif, sans serif, cursive, fantasy, and monospace. Serif has the little added elements to each of the letters that make them look a little bit more fancy. So when I think of a serif font, I think of Times New Roman. Sans serif has none of those little elements added to them. They are just straight letters. Cursive is more like handwriting fonts. Fantasy is going to be your bigger, thicker, chunky fonts. Those are ones that are good for posters and really big, bold, standout type of things. And monospace is a font that has each letter taking up exactly the same amount of space left to right. So each letter takes up the same. You can see these do not do that in these other fonts. When you specify a generic font family, it allows a browser to pick any font from that category. So it's good to have that in there as a fallback if some other font or the one that you've labeled it to pick is not available. So this example below, it's using generic font family fantasy. You can see how the text looks in the preview window right here. So if we change this to monospace, you can see it change to a monospace font. If you change it to sans serif, it'll change to a sans serif font. We can also specify fonts by their names, and sometimes you want to have a little bit more control over a font. There are very specific fonts that can be used though on the web, and some browsers can only see certain fonts. So this is using the Arial font. And you can see the Arial font looks exactly like this because that's what the default is going to be for a sans serif font. So it wants us to change the fonts down here to let's see, it says change the H1 font. So we're going to go to font family here. And instead of Arial, we're going to change it to Palatino. Palatino is a serif font. And then it says to add a P element. So we're going to add a paragraph element, and I'm going to put in my beginning and end tags right away. And it wants us to set the paragraph to sans serif. So we're going to say font-family, and we can click here instead of typing, and we're going to say sans serif. Gotta get rid of my quotes here. There we go. So when you're naming the font family, there's no quotes around it. If you're naming a specific font, it's going to have the quotes around it. So if I put these quotes around sans serif, you'll see it doesn't work. Does not work. There we go. Now, if I check my code, I should see that everything ran properly. Font size is important. So the default font size that you're going to see is going to be 12 pixels on a screen. It's also default for like Microsoft. They've moved it down to being 11 now if you look at Google Docs, Google Drive. So changing our font size, you just use font-size for the CSS property and then give it the value, and the measurement is pixels, which is the little dots on your screen that make up the image on it. So you're telling it how many pixels you want it to be. So you put the px at the end, and then it needs to end with that semicolon. So let's look at this example here. It says change, it says the font size is set to 24, change it to something bigger or smaller. So if I do 72, there we go, super big. If I do 5, super small. 12 is what you're, like the normal font that you're used to seeing. And for this challenge, it would like us to change the current, so it says the current H1 font size is 32 pixels. That's the default. It says change the P font size to match that of the H1 element. So I'm going to say P and font size 32 pixels, and then double the font size of the H1. So for H1 font size double of 32 would be 64. And there we go, 64 and 32. If we run our code, check code, has styles for H1. I did the H1. Well, that's correct. You wanted me to double it. Just ignore it, it's wrong. So font style and font weight. Sometimes you want to just give more emphasis to words within a paragraph. And we can learn, or we're going to learn here how to change the appearance of the letters in the text, including how to make letters look thinner or bolder. There's two properties for that, font style and font weight. So in CSS, the font style property is used to change how the text looks. So you can italicize your font by setting the property value to italic. So if you look at this as the italic, this is a normal font. So italic fonts look slightly slanted to the right and usually take up less horizontal space than a normal font. So they're just like, not even a little skinnier, it's just that they're turned to the side. And then font weight, we can use bold to make things look thicker. So the code here changes the font style to bold and the font style to italic and the font weight to bold. So this is a bold italic paragraph. It says try changing the font style and weight to other values. Well, they didn't give you any other values to look at, but I can tell you if we look it up, we have normal, bold, and you can also set an exact amount that you want it to do. So I could say 900. I could say 500. I could say 250. It's going to be too skinny. It isn't even going to touch it. Normal. Thin works. Bold. What's bolder? Bolder doesn't do anything. And then font style. Normal, italic, and oblique, which I don't think oblique works in here. Yeah, it didn't really do anything. Oblique really just is doing italics. So we can do the same thing in HTML. And the emphasis and the strong tags are great because it allows us to just change the bold or italics around a single word or a single element inside of a paragraph instead of the whole paragraph. Sometimes you just want to make one thing bold on the page, one word. That's when you would use the emphasis and the strong HTML tags. Now notice we're using HTML tags here. They're inside of the little triangle brackets, not in a style like this. So this example here uses strong around the word important. You can see that only the word important is bolded. And now it wants us to wrap the word emphasized with an EM. So go in front of the word emphasized and put the EM tag. After it, we're going to do the end EM tag. Now that word is italicized. So you can do that right in line in the body instead of styling up at the top. That is only used when you are doing like a couple of words within a paragraph that need to be changed. So most HTML pages have images on them. Images grab your attention. Most of the pages I read are just images. I like memes. Adding images to a page is going to make people want to look at your web page. We use the tag IMG to add an image to it. There's a lot of stuff that goes into the image tag, but one thing about the image tag, it's like the break tag. It doesn't have an end. The start tag itself has that closing bracket right in it. So there's a couple other things that go into it. So the source is how we tell it where to get the location of that image. So that image could be somewhere out on the web, or it could be one that's housed with your web page somewhere within that same server. To add an image, you have the image beginning tag, image source, and then equals. In the quotation marks, this is where you put the link that goes to that specific file. So whether it's a link to the web page or it's just a file that's somewhere within your server. So an absolute path is the full location on a website. That's the only time you're ever going to use an absolute path. So it'll have the HTTPS:// and the www. That's an absolute path. You don't need to know the difference between these two things. But a relative path is when it's relative to the web page. So we're going to see both ways of doing this. I wish this gave me a chance to get rid of this. It says, oh, this example below includes code for displaying an image on a web page. So this is a relative path. That source is not a www. That's housed somewhere here in the Tinker web page. Let's do this example together down here. It says, fix the errors in this document and add your own image using the image element. So there's a HTML head, body, body. So these tags are wrong to begin with. I can already see there is no end head. Indent it all weird. I do not like that they do that. The second body tag needs to end the body, and then we need to have an end HTML as well. All right, so that fixes the document issues. Now it says add your own image in the body using the image element. So we're going to say IMG SRC, not SCR, SRC equals. I'm going to put in the two quotes, my end, and my end bracket. You can go find an image on the internet for this. So I'm going to go find, I'm just going to go to images here, and I'm going to do a chocolate chip cookie. And I'm going to, oh, those look excellent. I'm going to get this actual picture. Now to get this actual link, I need to right click and I need to open the link in a new tab. Oh no, I don't. I need to open the image in a new tab, sorry. Open image in a new tab. I just want the image. So this is the link You can see it ends in a .jpg and it has that https www in front of it. So I'm going to copy that link and I'm going to paste that between my parentheses. And this giant cookie is going to show. Oh, that looks so delicious. Oh my goodness. Yummy. Run your check code and it should be fine as long as you pasted everything correctly. So the image element has a lot of attributes that can be used to change the way the image looks and to provide additional information about the image. So the alt attribute is important. Sometimes your picture won't show up. The alt allows you to put in some text that explains what the picture should be in case there's a slow connection or there was an error with that image. Here's an example of an image element with an alt attribute. This alt says lake and mountains. Watch what happens if I mess up that link. Now that I messed it up, that image doesn't work because .jp isn't anything. It doesn't know what I'm talking about. However, the word lake and mountains shows up because I have that alt in there. I'm going to put that back instead of keeping it messed up. We can also change the width and the height of an image. I usually only change one or the other because otherwise you need to do the math to figure out how to keep them relative to the same size, which is kind of a pain, and I don't think you want to do that. So this one is setting the width and the height of this image. If you mess with it, you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to change the height to 260. See how it stretches the image? Now, if I didn't have the width in here, and I changed this, it still keeps it relative to what it was. So that's why I never change both. I only change one at a time. All right, so this challenge I've done, you can see there's those cookies again. Oh, yummy. It says add an image with source and alt attributes, add 2 more images with different source and so 3 images total is what it wants you to do. The code is correct, so their basic setup is correct. So you're just going to go in the body and you're going to add 3 image tags. So I like to set up my image tags and get my alt in there right away. And they don't care about width, so I'm not going to mess with that. But this tag is correct. So once I have that correct, I'm going to paste it twice so that I don't have to mess with it again. And then I'm going to go find 3 photos to put in here and give those alternates. So again, if I was going to do these cookies again, and my alt would be chocolate, if I could spell, chip cookies. And this next one, let's do chocolate cake. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Open image in a new tab. Gonna grab this one. You can find what other images you want. You do not have to do what I'm doing. Chocolate cake. And let's do chocolate. Yeah, can you tell I'm hungry today? Chocolate mousse. Oh, that's cute. Oh, actually, that's kind of chunky. I don't want chunky mousse. That one looks good. All right, open image. Copy. And paste. Mousse, M-U-S-E-S-E. I don't know how to spell mousse. M-O-U-S-S-E. Yeah, that was right. Yay, me. So now all 3 images are in here. And they work just fine. If I run my check code, I should get all of that. We're going to stop here for today.